in order to come along and give an overview of the Associated Fellowship Program. So a special thanks to the special guest of the day, Michael, who is the lead of Associated Fellowship Program, and Dr. Nathan from Cardiff Learning and Teaching Academy. So thank you for accepting the invitation, and thank you so much for your valuable time to share with us today. I'll handle it to Dr. Michael and Nathan, so the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Huda. Lovely warm welcome and introduction. Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to be here with you this evening. I'm going to hand over to Nathan for the first part of the presentation this evening, and then I'll join you in a short while.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Yeah, same from me. Thanks so much for inviting us along. It's lovely to be able to speak to you this evening. We've spent a lot of time over the past 2 or 3 years now designing what we hope is a really good offer for our PhD students and other people across Cardiff University who are getting started with teaching and supporting students for the first time. So our aim this evening is to give you, some introductory information about our programs and how they can help you, and importantly, let you know how you might be involved and how to join us on this path. So I've got a few slides to walk through now. I should say that I'm the manager of our suite of programs that are aimed to support and develop teachers of all kinds across Cardiff University. And Michael, I don't know if you just want to quickly say what your role is within the team.
Thanks, Nathan. Yes, so within Nathan's team, as Huda mentioned earlier, I am the team lead for the Associate Fellowship pathway. So there are various different levels of fellowship, which we'll get onto in a short while, and those kind of correspond to different levels of roles and responsibilities when you're teaching and supporting students. So I'm the team lead for Associate Fellowship, so I have oversight of the programs. We've got 2 different programs which help and support people in working towards Associate Fellowship. So that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Michael. So I'm just going to call up some slides as I walk you through now. We've introduced ourselves, and it's important to note that our team sits within what's called the Cardiff Learning and Teaching Academy. So we're a group of staff who work across all different schools and disciplines. So we work with business school, medicine, history, English, across all parts of the university. And in many different ways. Sometimes we're helping schools develop their degree programs and their courses and to shape them and make them better. And sometimes we're helping individual educators with their practice, okay, how to be a good, effective teacher. So we work with and for everyone who's involved with teaching and supporting learning across the university. And one of the kind of most important ways we do that is to provide professional development programs and events to help people enhance their practice. So the team that Michael and I are in, we sit alongside other teams who are focused on things like digital education. Obviously, they were really important during the pandemic because everyone kind of shifted to sort of emergency teaching online when we couldn't go into the university. And other teams specialize on things like working with students to, very directly to develop our education provision. And as I say, sometimes to work in partnership with students and academics in different disciplines to develop their curriculum as well. So, as I say, we spent a lot of time kind of going out around the university and saying, well, what do people who are teaching really need in order to do their job well? Yeah, and our goal is always to provide the best learning opportunities for students across the university, no matter who they are and what they're studying and what level they're at. We want to see everyone, given the best chance of success. So we developed a range of different development programs for people to enhance their teaching practice. Okay, so the 4 coloured squares or shapes in the middle of the slide here represent the different pathways that we've got. So the one that we're going to talk to you about tonight is the Associate Fellowship Programme. But alongside that, there are also fellowship programs and senior fellowship programs, depending on your experience, the amount of teaching you're doing, the kinds of activities that you're involved with. There is a specific route for you to come on board with us and learn alongside us. We'll say a bit more about the differences between the Associate Fellowship Programme and the Associate Fellowship Scheme shortly, but the goal throughout this is to be flexible and to tailor different kinds of provision for people at different stages of their career to give them, again, the best chances to engage. Okay, so the Associate Fellowship Programme is our biggest programme in terms of numbers of participants. If you think the size of the university, all the time there are new people coming in to start their teaching careers, whether that's alongside their PhD or getting started with demonstrating and or working in specific learning support roles. So it's our biggest one, with potentially hundreds of people progressing through this part of our provision. And it's open for anyone who's involved in teaching or supporting learning. And quite often, the level of experience that goes along with the Associate Fellowship are people who may not be kind of leading modules, designing big parts of degree programs, but are taking on responsibility for certain sessions within a module, to lead on particular seminars, delivering some lectures, giving feedback on particular assignments, and also roles like, as I say, lab demonstrating, technicians, people who support students in libraries, or how to use learning technology well. So all of the roles, they need to have a student element to them. They need to have a learning element to the roles, because as we'll see, you need to draw on your teaching practice as you're developing, as you're progressing through the Associate Fellowship Programme. But the point is, it's really wide open, and there are all kinds of roles and different responsibilities that people that they may have that will qualify them to come on board and be part of the Associate Fellowship Programme. Big picture is we want everyone, the ultimate dream, I suppose, is we want everyone who is involved with supporting students to have had some training, to be given the tools to get started in order to do that job well. It's good for our students, and it's also really good for you in terms of your development, the development of your skill set, your profile, and as we say, all of our provision leads to a particular award, a particular teaching award. So that's the Associate Fellowship Programme. The Fellow Development Scheme it follows a similar track. So we follow similar themes, and the ultimate award of Associate Fellowship is the same. But generally, the people who come on that Fellow Development Scheme have a bit more experience. They may have been teaching for a while. They may have been doing some of these other learning support activities, but have not had the opportunity or the time for a few years to actually sit down and get the Associate Fellowship qualification, right? So we have a separate track for people on that pathway. So if you're just getting started with teaching and you want to learn as you go, then the Associate Fellowship Programme is a really good opportunity for you there. If you've already accumulated quite a few years of experience, I've upset the baby, and the Fellow Development Scheme, if you've got a few years experience and just want to carve out some time and get some support and mentoring to get that qualification there. Grand. So you know, our aim, as I said, is to support student learning. And the best way for us to do that is to really help educators along, to help them to pose and answer these key questions, right? What informs my approach to teaching? What are the things that really inspire me as an educator? How does that fit with what we know about how students learn and what we know about good practice? How can I engage a class and get people to respond well and take responsibility for their own learning? What methods are effective? There's a huge amount of information and literature and studies about what works in the classroom, yeah, and what helps students learn. We never have one simple answer to these things, and everything is variable according to the kind of teaching you're doing, who your students are, but we'll help you kind of navigate those questions, yeah, and find what works for you and your students. And the thing that's really important, what we base all our practice on, is how can we be inclusive in our teaching? How can our teaching be accessible to the huge, diverse learning community that we've got at a university like Cardiff, with big, you know, international community of different kinds of students with different experiences, different backgrounds, different motivations, different aims. It's kind of a fundamental starting point for all of our programs that we want to give every student, no matter what their background or ambition, a chance to engage equally. So those are there are big questions that are always on our mind that we help people work out in the course of our associate fellowship program. So, it's a very supportive environment that we've created. Really important for us that the team, that Michael and I and colleagues, Kerry Morris, Stephen Rutherford, the other academics on the program, will help you every step of the way. You know, it's very supportive. We will encourage you to think through and reflect on your teaching and what's working and how you can develop it, link you up with other sources of good information, to draw on all these things I'm talking about, you know, not just kind of 2,000 years of thinking about how learning happens, but, you know, what are some interesting developments in maths education at the moment? How are engineering academics approaching, you know, becoming more project focused perhaps in their teaching? So there's a huge kind of spectrum of things that we can help you explore. A big important part of this for all of us is that we all become part of a community of practice of educators, yeah, of people who are passionate about teaching and to help students succeed. So everyone who joins the associate fellowship program or scheme, all the way up to our senior and principal fellowship candidates, we're all part of a community of learners ourselves, right, who are sharing and talking about what's working. And you'll find, if you join us on one of the programs, you know, it's not actually that much of us talking. A lot of the time we're in groups, we're discussing, we're sharing experiences, we're thinking about how the ideas that we're talking about are manifested in our own practice. So, you know, by the end of it, our goal is that you'll be on your way to being a really good, inclusive, reflective, and effective teacher. And that's going to have an impact on student learning out there as well. The programs will not teach you how to teach for all those reasons. There's no one magic bullet. There's no one, you know, clear way to do things. It's about the journey. It's about thinking through the factors that are involved and your context and what works best for you and your students. So we'll give you the tools. We won't give you some kind of answer. In fact, we'll tell you why an answer like that wouldn't exist, but we'll help you, you know, find your own way through that in your discipline. Great. So I've talked a bit about, you know, use the phrase associate fellow quite a lot, and we get this from what's called the UK Professional Standards Framework, right? So in UK higher education and increasingly international education, there's a set of professional standards. Yeah, I'll talk a bit about this again shortly. But what that does is set out a series of expectations and values and principles that we think the sector has agreed are really important for educators to have, for teachers to have. Yeah. So a framework has emerged from that kind of thinking, which kind of sets out a series of stages that you can follow throughout your career. Yeah. So as you get started, so those kind of roles, perhaps a PhD student starting to pick up their first modules or contributing to a particular session, that would be seen as an associate fellow level activity, and that ramps up then through fellow, senior fellow and principal fellow, where you're essentially taking a big strategic lead on kind of university-wide things. So we're really focused on associate fellowship here, which is mapped to level 4 and above. So in other words, it's university level teaching. So material around working with primary school, secondary school pupils wouldn't automatically be relevant to this. We're very focused on teaching university level students, and that's called descriptor 1 of the UK professional standards. There's a lot of jargon in this stuff, but hopefully you can see in the table how it all comes together. And again, this is our touchstone. So when we created the programs, we were really clear that we needed to base these on these university-wide, sector-wide, higher education-wide standards. Yeah, so they are directly transferable then throughout your career. And if you achieve an associate fellowship, you're essentially any other university would recognize that as a legitimate quality mark for your teaching, and certainly it's counted by the statistical agencies and by the UK government essentially as being a recognised qualification to teach. So if you get an associate fellowship, you have a recognised sector qualification to teach. So along with the UK Professional Standards Framework comes a set of different expectations and benchmarks, right? So as you go through the associate fellowship, there are certain things that you'll need to demonstrate and evidence in order to successfully get that award of associate fellowship. And I won't go into all the detail, but it means being involved with certain types of teaching, right? Certain activities that go along with that. We want to see that you are reflective, that you are committed to developing yourself further, committed to being very focused on student learning and how and different ways in which we know that your teaching activity is working. So there's a bunch of things very achievable for people who are involved in this kind of activity, but we will continually nudge people back to these elements of the UK Professional Standards Framework as you come through the programme to ensure that we hit these various benchmarks. Michael, is that where I bring you in? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I can take over here. If you can give me control. Oh, there we are. I'm happy to share. Okay. There we go. Okay. So thanks, Nathan. So some of the things that I'm going to be saying will pick up from some of the things that Nathan has kind of already primed there. The key points of the programs are that as you go along, you'll produce a portfolio. Now, we were really keen when we were designing these programs to ensure that it was a case of little and often, that it wasn't overly burdensome in terms of workload for participants, right? Because we recognize that everybody who's doing our programs has a day job as well. Okay, so you might be a master's or a PhD student, you might be a member of professional services, you might be a member of academic staff on like an associate lectureship, for example. So we were really keen to make sure that it does what it needs to do, and that it's very much encouraging you to develop and reflect on your practice in an ongoing way, but without being overly burdensome. So with the portfolio, we will support you through completing that portfolio in the various program workshops. And after each of the sessions, after each workshop, there'll be a short task which will feed forward towards that portfolio. So the idea is that by the time you get to the end of the program, whether you do the program itself or whether you do the scheme, and we'll come on to the differences between those in a short while, whichever pathway you follow, by the time you get to the end of the course, you've sort of produced most of that portfolio. So you haven't got a big onerous workload then at the end of the course. And our program is what's called accredited. Okay, so that means that we can mark the portfolios in-house, albeit with recourse to an external examiner, and we can award the Associate Fellowship within the university on behalf of SSatCU. So what that means for any participant on the program is that you don't have to do a separate application to SSatCU to get your Associate Fellowship. So if you've ever looked into getting an Associate Fellowship, you know that there's a kind of online form that you've got to fill out, and you've got to write a series of case studies. You don't have to do any of that. Our program and our portfolio replaces that application to SSatCU. So in other words, if you complete the portfolio, if you do everything you need to do, if you do all of the tasks in the portfolio, which we will support you to do along the way, as long as you've done those successfully, then you will by de facto meet the criteria for Associate Fellowship. Okay. The other good point about being accredited is that there are no fees to pay. So as long as you are engaged by the university in some sort of teaching or learning support role at whatever level, as long as you are officially engaged by the university to do that, then the program is free of charge to you. So we've highlighted the Associate Fellowship Program and the Associate Fellow Development Scheme. So I'm just going to talk about some of the key differences between those, picking up on what Nathan said earlier. So I'm going to talk about the program first. So hopefully you can see me wiggling my mouse there on the left-hand side of the screen. So the program, as we've said, is designed chiefly for people with very minimal or with, in fact, no previous experience of teaching. Okay, so if you are in the audience and thinking, right, I've never done any teaching before, I don't really know where to start, I need some really structured support with my development, then that's the program for you. Okay, so it's quite formal. There's a series of workshops that everybody attends. Each of those workshops focuses on a particular theme. Okay, so for example, workshop 2 is focused on inclusion and inclusive practice and accessibility. As Nathan said, that's a kind of a common theme that we weave into all of the sessions, but that's really the key focus of workshop 2. Workshop 3, for example, is focused on assessment and feedback. So how you can give feedback to students, whether it be on like an exam or a kind of a clinical task or an essay or whatever kind of assessment you do, that you can give effective feedback to students. Workshop 4, for example, focuses on different approaches to facilitating active learning. So thinking about how you're asking questions in a classroom situation or a demonstrating situation, how you're kind of working the physical room or the online space effectively. So each workshop has a key theme. And as I say, we are very keen to make sure that these are practice focused. Okay, so that they introduce you to tools and methods that you can reflect on, that you can think about maybe applying for yourself and thinking, has this worked? Has this not worked? You know, could I adapt this approach? There is an element of theory, so we will introduce you to education theory at an appropriate level, but the focus is very much on developing skills that are practical and that you can take forward. The Fellow Development Scheme, as Nathan said, is a little bit more flexible. Okay, so this has been designed for people who already have some teaching experience in higher education, ideally in the UK. We've sort of said ideally around 2 years because this is very much designed to tap into that existing experience. And whereas the programme provides this kind of formal and structured support, the scheme gives this flexibility. So in the scheme, there's only one compulsory workshop, and then attendees, participants can choose from a series of other workshops which again are themed. So there'll be a different theme and area of focus in each of those, and you can kind of pick and choose which ones you want to come along to, depending on which areas of your professional practice, your teaching, you'd like to enhance, which areas you think could do with some development. So the focus here is very much on enhancing your existing experience. How can we tap into that existing experience and help you develop it further? Okay, and what we tend to find is people who've already done some teaching, they might have already reflected on and developed some methods that work really well for them. So the focus then is sharing those with peers in the workshops, sharing good practice, and also developing a more kind of systematic and detailed knowledge of the education literature. Because often you might have that experience if you've already taught, you might have that reflection, you might have a sense of what works for you, but you might not have that underpinnings in the literature. So it's that's a key theme in the scheme. I've said some of this already. The programme has 5 compulsory workshops and then an additional optional session. Okay, so the optional session is an interesting one. Okay, so we're back to the left of the screen here. What we tend to find is that by the time people get to the end of the fellowship programme, they tend to be, or in many cases, they can be starting to take on some additional roles. So, for example, they might be co-leading a module or co-designing curriculum, or maybe they've had some input into the design of an assessment, for example, and that might mean that they are meeting some of the criteria for fellow, which is the next level up. So that optional session works really well as a kind of bridge between associate and fellowship. It gives a kind of taster of what a fellowship program workshop would be like, so that if you do get to the end of the associate program and you're thinking, I might join you for fellowship, that's a kind of a teaser session, if you like, as to what a fellowship level workshop would look like. In both programs, you are assigned a mentor. Okay, so there is a requirement to meet with your mentor twice in the Associate Fellowship Programme, once in the Fellow Development Scheme, again, because the scheme is a little bit more flexible. The focus of the mentor is to support and to guide you in your development in both cases. Okay, those mentor meetings are useful touch points. They can also be used for mentors to give you feedback on some of the tasks for the portfolio, and indeed we encourage that to happen. The mentors will all have a level of advanced HE fellowship, so typically they are fellows or senior fellows. Okay, so they will have gone through a similar process as this themselves, so they will be able to give you tailored and structured feedback on your portfolio elements to make sure that they are the best they can be, to make sure that you're evidencing the development of your practice and evidencing your reflection on your practice. There's a difference as well between the two pathways on the portfolio. So the content of the portfolio is the same, but the way it's produced, there's more flexibility in the scheme. Okay, so whereas with the programme, you get a writing task after each workshop. It doesn't have to be a writing task. It can also be like a vlog, for example. But there is a task after each workshop. By contrast, in the scheme, you can very much more self-pace the portfolio around your kind of workload. So it's not necessarily the case that you have to come to all of the workshops in the scheme, and therefore you don't necessarily have a task to do after each session. it can be kind of more flexible to suit your time management. So those are the differences. In terms of the similarities, both programs are run by us, as Nathan has said, in the Cardiff Learning and Teaching Academy. So our fellowships team, we run the programs, and the themes of the various workshops in both of the programs are the same. So whichever pathway you take, you'll be given support and able to develop your practice in these key areas. I've highlighted some of them. The ones I haven't highlighted are getting familiar with the UKPSF. So that is our point of departure, that document that Nathan mentioned with all of the various criteria. We spend a lot of time in the first workshop making sure that everybody is familiar with that framework, everybody understands what it's about, what they need to do. And then towards the later stages of the program, when you've had time to do some teaching and put into practice the things you've been learning and reflecting on throughout the programs, there's scope to discuss some of the innovations you've made to your teaching practice, and then scope to discuss in that optional session at the end the pedagogical literature, so the education literature, in a bit more detail, and to start being a little bit more critical with the literature as well, because education literature is no different to any of the kind of literature you engage with in your subject areas. Okay, so there's no such thing as a perfect theory, and each theory has its strengths and weaknesses, and that's really an opportunity to really start getting to grips with some of the affordances and constraints of various approaches as well. So if you're like me, you'd probably be sat there thinking, oh, this sounds interesting, am I eligible? The short answer is probably yes, as long as, so this is the caveat, as long as you are actively involved in teaching or supporting learning in some way at Cardiff University, you are eligible to complete one of the programs. So either the full program or the scheme, depending on your circumstances. Okay. It's worth noting, I think Nathan mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to reiterate, it's worth noting that they've been designed to be completed alongside your teaching. So it is possible to start them or to start the program at least in anticipation of future teaching, but chiefly the majority of it has to be completed alongside teaching you're doing. Okay, so you can't complete the whole program in preparation for teaching in the future, because it's been designed such that it gives you the opportunity to put into practice the things that you're reflecting on, the things that you're learning along the way, and you have to evidence in your portfolio that you've been doing that. Okay, so yeah, those are the two caveats. As long as you have been taken on by the university to lead teaching or learning support in some way, then yes, you are eligible. So it doesn't have to be what we might call traditional kinds of teaching. It doesn't have to be, you standing at the front of a lecture room and giving a lecture to 200 people. It can be small group teaching. It can be lab demonstrating. It can be learning support. It can be managing a research group, for example, in some cases. But you need to be doing some teaching. Okay. And coming towards the end now, thinking, okay, well, I might be eligible, but what actually are the benefits of completing these programs and gaining the associate fellowship? Well, as Nathan mentioned, this is a teaching qualification, okay, and increasingly seen internationally as a teaching qualification, okay, and there's been quite a notable increase even in the past sort of 5-10 years in the extent to which this is now seen as the benchmark. So the UK Professional Standards Framework and the levels of fellowship are seen as like the benchmark of teaching qualifications in higher education, particularly in the UK, but increasingly internationally as well. Okay, and many institutions, again, particularly in the UK, will expect, so if you go for an academic job, they will expect you to have some level of HEA, advanced HE accreditation. Okay, so sometimes there will be a requirement for associate fellowship. Sometimes there will be a requirement for fellowship or being on the way to attaining fellowship. So if you can go into an academic job and say, look, I've already got my associate fellowship and I'm working towards fellow, that straight away puts you head and shoulders above probably 50% of the other applicants. The other thing is that it gives you professional recognition, even if you don't go into an academic job. It gives you professional recognition for your commitment to attaining certain standards and your commitment to developing and enhancing your practice. And that looks good in any job that you apply for or any job that you go into. That commitment to development, that commitment to attaining a set of high standards is a transferable asset, if you like, into any role.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Michael. Yes, hopefully that has inspired some of you to think about thinking about coming and join us and getting on board with one of our associate fellowship programs. We have multiple intakes across the year, so we'll have, there may be 2 groups of participants who start in January and then others who start later in the year in September. We're growing all the time and we're building our capacity, so we're able to, let more people come onto the programs and get involved and join us. So if this is something you're interested in following up, the best way is probably to drop us an email at that mailbox on the screen, and you'll come through to the team then. So, first port of call might be that mailbox, but we also have every Wednesday lunchtime between 12:30 and 1:30 an open Zoom like this, where 2 or 3 of us from the team will be there for the entire hour, and you could just pop in at any point during that hour for a chat, and we can talk through the teaching that you're doing now or your plans over the next year, and then start to think about how we can match you to one of the entry points to our programs. So we're very flexible. We are oversubscribed, I will say that. We've had hundreds of people being interested in this, and we're trying to build our capacity so we can give as many people as possible a chance to engage. But an email or come and see us on a Wednesday afternoon, and we'll be able to have that discussion with you and help you on board. So I really hope that was useful. It's a quick tour of our offer. The participants so far are really enjoying it, and it's been lovely to be able to kind of spread that with you this evening.
Yes, thank you so much, Michael and Nathan. That was very, very inspirations and informative. I am one of the students who is joining this program. I have experience already, which is over 2 years, but the Associated Fellowship program added to my knowledge and skills very, very wonderful. I learned so much regarding the assessments, regarding how I face students. And I think the first thing was, I'm thinking about it, and I believe all the Saudi are the same, not only Saudi, like international students, because our first language is not English. And we were thinking about the language barriers, how if the student drop us the questions that we don't understand, and how if something like incorrectly or misunderstood. But this program teach me and just build my confidence being very over. I can handle the class over 200 students. If I don't know the answer, I will come back to the students by the answer. It's this program also teach me that it's impossible to have all the knowledge. So the students and the tutor, it's like we exchange the knowledge between each other, and also build the friendships with the students. And yeah, so I'm very, very grateful to join this program, and I hope that Saudi student as well just benefits from this opportunity, which is giving for free plus teaching experience at Cardiff University. So yeah, thank you so much, Michael and Nathan. I really appreciate your time. And I just handle it to the audience. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, unmute yourself, or write it down in the chat. Okay, Mohammed.
Yes, hello.
Yes, hello. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Nathan, Michael for this insightful presentation first. I am on my second year in the PhD program, so I was wondering how long the program is. Like, am I a bit late now to apply for this program, or is it a good time? Or if I didn't have the chance to apply now, is it possible to apply next year? So I was wondering just about the duration of the program duration. Yeah, that was my question.
Thanks, Mohammed. Yeah, I must apologise because I thought I'd put it in the slides and now I see that I haven't. So that's entirely my fault for not telling that information. The program is a year by default. And that breaks down into 6 months to attend the workshops. That's assuming you're doing the program rather than the scheme. As I've said, the scheme is a little bit more flexible. So with the program, there's roughly 1 workshop a month. And then what happens then once you finish the workshops is that you get a 6-month period in which to submit the portfolio, and you can submit at any point during that 6 months. So there'll be a choice of deadlines. It's a rolling deadline. So what you can do is basically just pick the deadline that suits you best in terms of your workload and your commitments. And obviously your mentor will support you with that decision as well. So it can take, you might decide that having finished the workshops, you want to submit at the very next submission point, in which case you might be done in sort of 7-8 months, but you can take up to a year to do the program. So that was one of the other things when we designed it. So the program that this replaces, the Learning to Teach program, was 2 years, and that was quite onerous. That was a big time commitment for people. So we wanted to really make sure that this was that you could be through and done comfortably within an academic year.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That's okay. And in terms of signing up, if you can drop us an email, we can discuss when would be best to get you signed up and to get you started on the program.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right, no worries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Michael. I have Aisha. The floor is yours. You can unmute yourself.
Hello. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Thanks, Aisha.
I would like to first of all thank you both for a wonderful presentation. It was extremely informative. My query is that I'm a postgraduate student. I'm a postgraduate occupational therapy student, but in the future, I am interested in teaching. So will I be able to take up the associate program? Am I eligible for it?
Sorry, Nathan, did you want to?
No, that's fine. I don't want to cut you off. You go for it.
Potentially it would depend on when you were allocated some teaching. So as I say, yeah, it is possible to start the program in anticipation of future teaching, but you wouldn't be able to sort of go through the complete course without doing some teaching. So what I would probably say, what we tend to advise people is we'll take the cue from your school, so we can pop you on the waiting list, absolutely. And then if you can then let us know when your school says, yeah, we want you to do some teaching, then we can kind of look at sort of moving you up that waiting list and getting you onto the program as soon as possible.
Oh, okay, fine. So if I have taken up a teaching module in my optional modules in my course, would that make me more eligible to take up the program?
Yes, absolutely. If you're doing some teaching, then yeah, we would look to try and get you onto the program as soon as possible.
All right. Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to clarify, I mean, because everyone will be writing up their portfolio as they go through, what we're asking for in that is, how did you respond to these things in your own practice? So say we have a session about giving feedback to students, we would want to see how you've implemented that, so in the classroom, I gave feedback to students in a particular way, or I did some marking and I acted on it in that way. So we're really interested in, how you practice the things that we talk about in the program. And that's why, it's important that people are actually engaged in teaching as they're with us. But thanks for your question, Aisha.
Yeah, I understand that better now. Thank you.
Okay.
That was a great question, Aisha. I was discussing with this to Michael earlier before we start the session, so it comes at the right time. Thank you. Thank you, Michael and Ethan, to answer these questions. So we have Al-Hanouf. The floor is yours, Al-Hanouf.
Yeah, hi there. Thanks for the presentation. Sorry if I missed that. I don't know if you guys said it in the presentation, but I want to ask, how often does the program run? Is it going every 6 months or is it once a year? Because I'm already on the waiting list, so I'm just wondering when it's gonna run again and I can be in it.
Yeah, so at the moment we're planning on another 2 intakes in September, I think, Michael, which we might increase as new staff come on board. But generally, there are 2 or 3 intakes across the year of around 50 students, on different streams. So we're getting through the waiting list. If your name's on there, sorry if we're not getting to you quick enough, Al-Hanouf, but it'll just be a few months before the next intake, and then we're building.
So the next intake will be in September from now?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, what we try to do is prioritize people also who have got a tight deadline. In other words, some people who are approaching, the end of their PhD or they're moving on. Sometimes we'll try and move them kind of up the waiting list so they get a chance to engage while they're still with us.
Yeah, I understood. Thanks a lot.
That's great. So yeah, I guess if you are, as Nathan says, if you are at the end of the PhD program, then I recommended you to go and email them and just explain the situations, and they will push you further for your waiting list. So yeah, that's great. Thanks, Al-Hanouf, for the questions. Do you have any questions? Do you have anything would you like to add? You have such a lovely and positive feedbacks in the chat. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here today.
Thank you for having us. It's lovely to be able to speak to everyone.
Aisha, are you still having questions?
No,
Aisha?
I got it. Yeah, no, they solved it for me. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries, thanks. Okay, I think all done for today. Yeah. So again, welcome everyone for being here today. Thank you so much, Nathan and Michael, for your valuable time to just present about this program. It's very, very appreciated. And yeah, looking forward for all the students who will join us today to join the program. And I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Huda. Absolute pleasure. Anytime.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Have a lovely night. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.